Order of business, are there any suggested revisions? All right, we'll proceed with the agenda as it stands. Public appearances, I see that we have none. Thank you. All right, and that takes us to the consent agenda. Do we want to have a motion to approve as a whole, or do we want to separate those items?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented. Move approval of the consent agenda as
Thank you.
presented.
Do we have a second?
I'd like to second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, the consent agenda has now been approved.
I'd also like to add a thank
Yes.
you for the gift donations that were listed. I don't remember how we do that out of order, or if that comes later in the announcements, or how you wanna do that.
Gotcha.
But we did approve a gift.
We did, thank you for that.
Should we put that under announcements maybe, or when should we do
You
that?
can do it under recognition.
That's a good way, let's do it there.
Otherwise, we had to pull it and then just, yeah, no.
Okay, great. Thank you, which does take us to recognitions,
But I
so,
was trying to remember how we did that.
sure. Go
So can we recognize, and thank you to the Glacial Drumlin PTO. They organized and contributed $13,000 for playground and other outside equipment, as well as $3,000 for books for the libraries in each of the pods. So that was awesome.
ahead. Wonderful, yeah. Any other recognitions this evening? Yes?
I want to recognize the fourth graders at Cottage Grove School who did their book reviews today. And it was absolutely amazing. These kids were totally engaged, every one of them. I went through there and talked to almost every student, and it was really an enlightening and fun experience. So, and I'd also like to recognize the facility committee. I know that Dean and Jennifer and I watched the meeting last night, and we've got to thank those people for taking their time to come and do this. And Dan and Lisa did a wonderful job of presenting information, and then they broke out into groups with Paul and Emily Foster. And I mean, they all deserve thank you for a very excellent meeting. I actually received at least 3 comments back about what a good meeting it was. Thank you.
Anyone else for recognition? All right, that takes us to correspondence and
Oh, I did
announcements.
have, I'm sorry, I was slow in raising my hand.
No worries, go.
And thank you to Dan and Jared for all the work you put into getting our annual meeting pulled off.
Thank you.
That was a ton of work. And I just thought we should make sure to recognize that and know what it takes to do that so well. And I also feel like we accomplished everything we had hoped for, which is also congratulations. Because that turned out to be a more complicated meeting than maybe a year ago you would have thought. So thank you to both of you for all you did for that.
Yes, and I think I would personally like to thank Mr. Jelka for a little bit of parliamentary coaching. I appreciated that support. Yes, that was great.
It went well. You didn't look too frightened at all.
I was not frightened. I was trying to do the right flow chart, and so it was very nice to have a kind person sitting beside us. So that was great. That takes us to correspondence and announcements.
I'll start. We have the gala coming up, MGEF. We had a meeting the other day. The gala's coming up on the 4th, and they were curious who was going to be there from the board.
Are you like taking it out?
No, I just was curious. I'm not sure yet because my son is in the Monona play and he's at sectional, so I don't know
Gotcha.
what time that intersects. But
Dean has bought a table. I bought a table for the board, and I kind of turned it over to Jennifer. I know that Susan Fox is going with a guest. There are 8 seats, and Carrie.
I'm going, but I'm sitting with Jason McCutcheon, and
Yes.
we're going to be working
Yes.
on the silent auction.
so we're good. Peter
So-
wasn't invited, so we're good.
Peter's making peach pies, is what I heard.
Nice.
Is it okay that I tell that?
Actually, they're Monona peach pies with peaches grown in Monona, so it should be extra valuable because we know that makes them extra good.
Okay, that's my
The
announcement.
tree.
It's going to be a good time though.
Oh,
Recognizing
it's a great
Rebecca
night.
and MZ21.
Show
Yes.
choir is going to be there.
Show choirs.
Oh my goodness, it'll be
They're
great.
going to sing some ballads apparently.
Yeah. All right.
And you buy lots of drink tickets. The wine is supposed to be excellent. So,
Okay, all right. I have just one quick piece of correspondence. I received a very nice thank you note from Reed Foster to the board, thanking us for our work. So I just wanted to share that out publicly. So
Oh, is that for board appreciation week?
It was.
He was on it, man.
he was. He handed it right to me. So,
actually, another one.
yeah.
I just went to the Racial Justice Conference a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago, and there was a nice contingent of, I actually missed
Yeah.
the first day, went the second day, so. And then they all got together and debriefed after, and we have a lot of good people in our district doing many good things, so it was cool to be part of that, and their honesty and passion to make everything better for all of the kids, so.
Thank you. All right, okay. So then that takes us to the administrative report and Superintendent Dan Olson.
Okay, I have one piece to report on tonight, and that's regarding the due diligence contingency on the offer to purchase that was recently approved by the board. And so with that, the most important piece that we're doing right now are the wetlands delineation and the site survey to make sure that the property is usable. The wetlands delineation has been completed, and it was a very positive report in that it showed that the site does not contain any wetlands. And so the next piece then is the actual site survey, which will be completed by early November. And so you're gonna have a little bit later in the agenda, or coming up very shortly in the agenda, is about the financing piece of that. But again, it's still if something were to happen, the board still has the authority to pull out of the deal based upon those contingencies. And so as we get closer to that timeline and with the site surveys done, we'll confirm that all the things are in place before it's final.
Is this process also get at soil contamination and that sort of thing?
Yes, that's all part of it. So some of it we do ourselves with the site survey. Others are documents that the property owners have had to provide to us. And so far, everything's in order.
Any other? Okay.
I mentioned that because one of the reasons we have a Huska Park was to get the contaminated soil out of Pier 37.
All right, so tonight, we do not have any board reports, which takes us to possible action items. And the first of these is a resolution authorizing the borrowing not to exceed $1,600,000, providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes. Yes, go ahead.
I move approval of the resolution authorizing the borrowing not to exceed $1.6 million and providing the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion.
All right, Michelle Weiberg is here with PMA, and she'll be able to walk you through the process. And so, as we have approval at the annual meeting to purchase the land, and this will allow us to go through the short-term borrowing process to take possession of the land. And so, Michelle, with PMA.
Sure. So this resolution is you're issuing debt outside of referendum. So the payments on this potential note issue would be inside of revenue limits. And to authorize that takes board resolution, which is before you this evening. There's then a notice to electors posted in the paper, and a 30-day petition period runs out. We are allowed to or able to lock in interest rates during the 30-day petition period. We just can't close on the notes, meaning we can't deliver the $1.6 million until after the 30-day petition period. So the thought is get this first initial resolution done, notice to electors published, 30-day petition period running, and then at your November 8th meeting you would authorize the final interest rate on the notes. The thought here is to do a shorter term issue versus having a 10-year amortization or payback or longer, just doing maybe a balloon maturity or bullet maturity that's due in, say, 2020 for the entire $1.6 million, but is prepayable as early as 2019. And we came up with this concept in consulting with administration with the thought of this is to purchase land that potentially could have something built on it someday, and if it could be, you know, this note could be paid back with a referendum borrowing potentially in the future, or there's TID closures on the horizon, other sort of elements. So let's get the funds available to close on the land, I believe in December, you need funds by, and then kind of work into a long-term financing at a later date when we have some of those other pieces to the puzzle in place. The notes themselves, with Jared's direction, we will more than likely look to some local governments as potential purchasers. Some of you board members who have been on the board for some time know that we've done that in the past and had some luck with other local governments, you know, buying your notes as an investment. So we're going to start there. Kind of keeps cost of issuance down and is sort of a more streamlined approach to get this note issue done. So that's a little background on the resolution you have this evening, as well as what we think the eventual structure of the notes will look like, and how will we get those notes sold in the market, or in this case, potentially to local governments.
So yeah, one of the things we've requested PMA and Michelle to do is to reach out to the city of Madison, Dane County, and Madison College to be able to sell those two. We think that's a positive due to the fact that it's interests that our taxpayers as well are supporting, and it keeps it local. Obviously, Michelle and her expertise with her firm is able to determine if those interest rates are compatible or not. Obviously, we're not going to enter into an agreement where, even though it's local, we're paying 15, 20, 30% more interest rate, but definitely starting there per the district's direction.
Questions?
Are these are our payments on these notes amortized over time? In
Not
in
yet.
smaller increments?
Not yet. So the notes would just be due in full. The 1.6 million. You would have no principal amortized until
That's due.
2020. So the whole idea here is there will be another financing in the future, whether that's 2019 or when that occurs. It would just have to occur before 2020. So rather than locking you into a longer term amortization now, waiting to have some of these other pieces.
I wanted to get an answer to that because we had a levy override,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes up in about 4 or 5 years too.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to look at some things.
Yeah.
In 4 or
Sure.
5 years
Yeah,
anyway.
so this will occur before that.
Yeah, this will be dealt with one way or another, by 2019 or 20. Up until then, it's kind of a soft landing in terms of your operating budget. There'd just be interest only that you'd have to allocate out of the operating budget for these notes. So that should be a minimal impact.
Other questions?
What does the land earn? It's rented out for this farmland, that would continue?
That would be the intent, yes.
Yes, what is the earnings on that? I'm curious, what does it earn? Anybody know?
I don't think it's public information on that part quite yet.
Okay.
Obviously, when the district decides to enter into a
Yes, sure.
agreement with the
Yeah,
the
obviously
yeah,
we'll-
we will
okay.
definitely, but
Okay,
I'm not for sure
good point.
because
yeah, all right. I was.
Nope.
Okay, it's not rented out now, it's now.
it is rented out, and there is rental
Okay,
income
but
that comes in.
But that's not public information.
I don't believe so, since
Okay.
it's going to the.
All right, thank you.
We don't own it yet, right? So
Right.
can it-
Right.
Do you want a bid, Peter?
No, I'm just curious how that plays into the earnings on the land, plays into the
Yeah.
finance.
I know.
Obviously.
If we get a second bidder, we could raise the price.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For being available and walking
You
us
bet.
through that. All right, so at this time, are we prepared to take a vote? And it needs to be a roll call vote. Okay, so we've had our motion, our second, our discussion and presentation. We'll start with Dean with a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right, that resolution carries, passes. Thank you. That takes us to our second possible action item, extracurricular schedule revision.
Okay, we have one new position that we are proposing for approval tonight. Model UN has been a program at the high school that has grown in popularity. Our current advisor, Jeremy Wallace, has done a tremendous job with that. And so, like we have with some other programs, the student participation has continued to grow. And so we're recommending adding a second position, an assistant advisor position, to help support that program. And so you have with you the recommendation that came from Paul Brost, who consulted with the advisor in this. And so on the actual attached document, it shows up on page 3 under student organizations, adding the position of assistant model UN advisor, paying 3% of the base, which is consistent with our other programs who have assistant positions of being 3% less than the head position. So we're asking for the approval of that revision this evening.
I would like to make a motion that the board accept the revision to the extracurricular 2017-2018 extracurricular schedule in relation to the assistant model UN advisor.
I can second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Discussion or questions? Any?
Well-deserved, I think, a good program.
All right, are we prepared to take a vote? Great. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, this motion carries. Thank you. That takes us to a discussion item as we turn over our agendas. Facilities Advisory Committee. I want to make sure I get all those words in the right order. An update.
Okay, so we chose to put this as a discussion item on the agenda as opposed to a report, just so you have an opportunity to discuss and offer any feedback. I think as was mentioned, we had 3 board members who were able to attend last night. We appreciate them taking the time and doing that. So what I've attached on the board docs are all of the documents that were distributed that evening, as well as I added today the actual PowerPoint that we used as a reference to go through our work. So that's on there now as well for you. And the most important piece that I'd like to share out is our plan on how we're going to have this, our board reports and an opportunity for board feedback to the group. And so what we're recommending, the charge that was approved by the board dictated that there will be monthly reports. And so we've selected the 3 dates that are listed on board docs of November 8th, December 13th, and January 10th, where we'll provide those monthly reports. One of the things we asked last night, we felt is important to actually have committee members here present for that report and dialogue, as opposed to myself or Jared reporting out. And we did get a couple volunteers last night, and we'll certainly encourage as many committee members as possible to come to those board meetings. And so we'll prepare at that point, since our first 2 meetings are really a lot of information gathering, we thought it made sense to wait till after we have 2 done, and then to be able to put together a written report for the board that can be shared out with those committee members. And again, an opportunity then for board discussion and dialogue and feedback that we can record and take back to the committee as well. So that's the plan on how we're going to do that. Certainly as we go along, we'll be looking for your feedback about, is this process working? I know that was a concern, and legitimately, as we talked about this, to make sure, how do we have our board work with this committee, to move together, as we do this work. So the other thing I would add is that what I would recommend is, as individual board members have questions, comments, things that perhaps that the committee should be considering in their work, feel free to contact me directly with those pieces, and I can make sure that that's considered as part of their working agenda, or at least be able to give the feedback about where that might fit in. As an example, at our first meeting last night, on one of the documents on the guiding principles, I got some board feedback, and we made some adjustments to present to the committee. And so I think those sorts of things are really important, that you feel involved. You don't have to wait till November 18th to express a thought or question or opinion, that we can make sure that we work into the discussion, because there's a lot of questions that are going to come up that right now we're trying to anticipate all the things that we think need to be discussed and so on, but inevitably there's gonna be things that we miss, and so I think having that feedback along the way is really critical. So with that, I'll stop and open up to comments or questions, or,
The only, I was just gonna comment that it would be nice, I noticed the posting on board docs is not the updated guiding principles.
oh, really?
And those
Okay.
are so good. Again, when I read the guiding principles, I didn't see that language that says, you know, in fact, a couple of the committee members had also said to me, this sounds like this was written by people who are builders versus parents of kids who are going to school. And so Dan really adjusted the very first guiding principle to clearly address student learning and meeting the needs of our students. And he did it extremely well, and he did it in a very short period of time. And the interesting thing about how he did that last night was kind of like tonight. He said, I wanted to make sure that you all know you can have input to this. And he was talking to the whole committee, and then he used that example. For instance, we've already made revisions to this so that we could address this issue more clearly. And it made people feel very comfortable in that environment, making comments. And they didn't just talk, they made comments, they asked excellent questions. They made comments about the documents. It was clear most of them came in prepared. It was a very good meeting to watch and very well organized.
Thank you.
And Lisa did a great job.
Okay. So on the guiding principles, so I just added, if you refresh your board docs, to version 2, which is what was presented last evening, and there will be a version 3. There was a lot of feedback last night from the committee, and so we'll be making some additional revisions, so we'll make sure we share that out when it's completed as well.
Can I clarify? So the folks at EUA indicated that they would take any of the processing work
Mhm.
and somehow collate that, and then does that become, well, where does it go? There we go.
Yeah.
Like, so all that excellent group work from last night, where might a person be able to,
Yeah.
to see something?
So what we decided as far as have a place that it could be accessible by everyone, the facilities committee, the board, and of course the community, we are going to dedicate a web page to the work of that committee. And so we have a page set up right now that has, basically what's on there right now is as a background about the charge that the board approved. And so as we put those documents together, we'll do that ourselves internally. The folks from EUA and FinNorth, of course, will help, guide us about, how to format and what needs to be on there. But yeah, that'll be the holding place for everything. So we'll probably try to duplicate. We'll have it available on the website, but I'll also try to add all the documents on board docs, if anything, just as a place that you always know you can go back and find things, as far as what occurred at which meetings. But so I think, but a lot of the public sometimes still, board docs isn't the easiest to navigate. And so having it on the website, I think, will be much more accessible.
Great, thank you. Any
I
other-
see version 2, it looks different than version 1. Thank you, more words, anyway. Right.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you for the update and the opportunity. That takes us to future meetings. Any questions or announcements attached to any of our future meetings? As usual, we have a robust list. It's gonna take us into November, so, all right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We're looking for a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn at 7:27.
Second.
Thank you for the second. And all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those all those opposed say nay. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.